Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of Confessions of a Business Owner webinar. And I'm delighted this afternoon to have April Joy Sarant of AGS Training Solution. And she's going to talk to us about how to manage change and well-being in difficult times. As you know, it's really, really tough running a business. 95% of small business owners ultimately fail. And that is mainly because they're not dialed into their purpose. They're building the wrong business. And what we want to do through these series of webinars is really help business owners understand what it is that should be putting fire in their belly every single day. What it is, what does it mean to be building the right business? And I know that this is something that's very, very close to April's heart, you know, having that fire in your belly and being able to do what you love every single day and just kind of build the right business. So, you know, it's really, really important that you love what you do. And you know that old adage, if you love what you do, you never work a day again in your life. So April, good afternoon to you.
Hiya, thanks for having me on.
No, thank you. Thank you for your time. I know this is a really, really key topic, particularly what's gone on in the last 12 months. This, how do you manage change and well-being in difficult times? Before we get into the detail, if you don't mind, just take us back to that pivotal moment in your career when you said, you know what, I need to build a business to deliver this. I need to help business owners and leaders with this concept of change and well-being in difficult times. So just tell us about that pivotal moment.
Yeah, so throughout my career, I've always delivered and always trained. Funnily enough, I started my first ever audience, shall we say, was in a prison, and it was to a room full of women serving sentences in a women's prison. And that was the moment when I realized that I love helping people. I love giving people tools to navigate life a little bit better. And fast forward a decade and a half later, and I found myself in workplaces talking through with individuals how to keep themselves well, how to navigate difficult times. And I genuinely never knew how I would get paid for doing what I loved to do. And I remember having many conversations with lots of different friends, some saying just go for it, some saying just put yourself out there. And so a number of years back, I hired a room in Bradford, and I invited everybody I knew who worked for an employer, anybody I knew who was an employee or who was any sort of staff member in a company. I said, I'm putting on a free event talking to businesses and individuals about keeping themselves well, building resilience. Do you want to come along, and will you invite your boss? That was it. I paid for the room, got maybe 60 people in the room from many, many different sectors, police officers, NHS, teachers, and really it was all through social media. Ran a free training all around wellness. And from there, that's where business built. It took me a while to pull in paying clients, but when you are good at your craft and you spend a lot of time honing it, people will pay when you can give them and deliver a service that helps people perform better. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, I guess.
And why is this concept of managing change and well-being so important to you personally?
I think I run a business. I also have 3 young boys, and we all know that life is busy. We live in a world and in a culture and society that is busy. There's always something to do, always an email to respond to, a phone call to take. And a number of years back, I found myself in what I would call burnoutville. I had worked too hard. I burnt the candle at both ends, and I had nothing else left to give. And I thought I was the only one that ever got myself there. But in conversations with lots of people, I realized this is common. And I also realized lots of people live a lifetime in burnout. And the thing for me that I noticed was when I was burnt out, my productivity went down. And the first people that were damaged were the people closest to me, the people behind my closed door in my home. And so I determined that I never ever wanted to go there again. Rebuilt my life with some much better boundaries, and really learned the art of well-being. and navigating change in difficult circumstances, and realize that lots of other people are interested in that topic as well.
So this kind of concept of burnout, as you call it, because I was reading an article last week with, I know it's Grant Cardone or something, saying there's no such thing as burnout. It's just a consequence of other things. And I mean, it's probably another debate for another day. There's always an opinion, but anxiety and overwhelm that I see and hear all the time in small business owners that causes that burnout. What in your view causes overwhelm and anxiety, and has that changed in the last 12 months?
So what I would say causes it, so if I can use this really simple illustration, I didn't plan on it, but I just happen to have fresh ginger lying in my cafetiere. So how I view burnout is continually we pour out of our lives, we pour into work, into family, into relationships, into being a member of the community, continually giving. If we do not intentionally pour back in, what can happen is our levels of storage go down. It's like running your car on empty, and it starts to bring up problems. And I think in our lives, if we continually give out without taking time back for ourselves, time for well-being, time for a walk with friends, time for rest, time for play, all of those things we've kind of eroded, I would say, over the last maybe few decades, because there's always work to do. But those things are vital to live well, because I remember hearing somebody say, what if we climb the ladder of success only to find it's leaning against the wrong wall? If we build incredible success, but we have nothing to give in our personal lives and we have no joy and fulfillment, then is the great success worth the success? It's a good question to ask. So I think burnout is real. I think most of us would admit that burnout's real, and we usually know it because we feel like we don't have anything left to give. Usually we live kind of on the edge of ourselves, and often with a lot of frustration, and maybe short fuses are often signs of burnout.
So what's causing anxiety and overwhelm, has that changed in the last 12 months, or have they just exacerbated what was already there?
Absolutely. I think we are all experiencing it a lot more. I think, we're human beings created for connection. And in this past year, so much of the connection that we would be used to having has gone. And the other thing is, as human beings, we make plans without anybody telling us, or without anybody, instructing us to. We all plan. We plan for a holiday. We plan to see friends in a few weeks. For the past 12 months, we haven't really had anything to be planning for and looking forward to. And that does something to us. It keeps us going when we know we're working towards something. When we take away all those things, it can be very difficult to get up and to keep going. And that has definitely weighed very heavy on everybody. And anxiety is a fear of the unknown, and often an overwhelming fear of the unknown. And we've lived through a year where, not even Boris can tell us what's going to happen. There is so many unknowns. So it definitely heightens anxiety for most.
But we hear it, don't we? We hear kind of man up, just crack on, work through it, just pull your socks up, just ride the wave. We hear all of those things. How do we as employees or as leaders, how do we spot those early signs that there's a problem? Because if we don't spot the sign and we don't deal with it, it just makes the problem worse and worse, doesn't it? So what are the early warning signs for us?
I think making sure that we build cultures where it's okay for people to say, I'm not okay. Sometimes we hail the individuals who, work without any breaks and work through their lunch break and are so exhausted all the time. And sometimes we can build cultures where that's celebrated. I think enabling a culture where people can say, I'm not okay, can we talk through this? And also, those sayings like crack on, put your, pull up your big girl pants, all those types of things, they're okay. And there are times when we say, just crack on. And that's not wrong, I don't think. I think what's helpful to understand is, in order when things are difficult, when there's lots of change, when there's high pressure, maybe when there's lots of anxiety. Oftentimes, if we look at a subject like resilience, in order to help staff and individuals be resilient, employers and workplaces, we're able to put, if I often call it like padding around people. So if you imagine the American footballers that go out to play, they have all sorts of pads from their head right down to their feet, and it protects the fall, it protects the knocks. And we can do that as employees. We can help individuals build personal and mental resilience through this padding. So it might be that we have some wellbeing sessions staff can attend. It might be that we make sure we create a culture where people can talk openly about how they're doing. It might be that we put some, a fun team day on to build people up, to build morale. And all these little things encourage padding, so that when we go through difficult times, individuals may well get knocked, and there may be times we've got to just crack on, but they're able to bounce back and get back up a little bit easier.
But having that padding and creating that culture is what leaders can do, isn't it? But how do I, as a leader, how do I spot that there are problems with my team? How do I spot that there are issues that need dealing with, rather than just, oh, they'll be okay?
I think everybody responds and reacts differently to overwhelm, to anxiety. I think oftentimes when team morale is low, that's a really good indicator. I think sometimes often people try to retract a little bit when they're feeling overwhelm and pressure, and so there might not be such a community feel. I think if ever we get that sense, it's important to just ask some questions. I have a friend that runs a large company, and she always uses this phrase, and I think it's brilliant. She says, I can't possibly be in all of the detail, but what I do have is my finger on the pulse. So we hear the mutterings, we get the little bits of feedback that are able to feed our intelligence and understanding how people are feeling, where people are at. And yes, we can't be in every conversation, and we wouldn't want to be in all the detail, but just having our finger on the pulse, sensing maybe when workloads are overwhelming and deadlines aren't being hit all the time, instead of wading in and reprimanding, maybe trying to understand a little bit about why isn't the work being done to the standard that it should be. And oftentimes the curious questions help us understand where people are at, and maybe pick up some of those themes.
And this is a leadership skill for me, April, I think, because, going back, a generation ago, when I first started out in my career, surrounded by managers and leaders that didn't want to listen, they didn't want to ask the right questions, and even if they got told an answer, they'd almost wash over it. So they were listening out for what they wanted to listen for. What they weren't particularly doing is listening out for and observing the things that they needed to observe and the things they needed to hear to know that there was a problem.
Yeah.
And I think true leaders, for me, are actually reading what's not being said.
Yeah.
And they're listening to what isn't being said, and they're identifying that there's a problem based on those assumptions.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, definitely. And I think reading between the lines is a skill, and having our finger on the pulse is a skill, without being overwhelmed and our finger in every pie, which we often can't have. Another thing that I think is often a real indicator, if ever I'm working in businesses and I pick up from staff that there's a blame culture, I often think when there's overwhelm, when there's pressure, when people are beginning to pull apart a little bit, one true sign is often blame. So no one takes responsibility, no one has capacity to take responsibility. So we kind of push and shove blame, and are really quick to cover ourselves. And that to me shows low morale and low team connection, because if I'm only out for myself and only working on my project, it doesn't create the best, the most creative, greatest productivity across an organization.
And that's leadership as well, isn't it? I was with a client a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about business values and what's important to them as an organization. And one of the things we came out with, which is an iteration of a famous Leeds United one, and it's side before self every time. If you're putting yourself ahead of the rest of the business, and you're going to get a blame culture, and you're going to get division. What you've got to do is you've got to put you've got to put the team first. If that means sometimes you come second, but then have an option to be able to raise an issue with the leader and know that it's going to be listened to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I guess that's the key, isn't it? If we raise an issue, no one will be heard, no one will be listened to. I think oftentimes it's not so much that people want heaven and earth moving for them. I think often actually people just want to be heard, genuinely heard. And sometimes issues die down way, way quicker without a whole load of things being necessarily changed, by somebody being given that moment to share and feel heard, because it's appreciation and it's value, and all of us want that.
Yeah, there's a famous quote, and I can't remember who said it, but it's not what you do or what you say, it's how you make me feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And good leadership's about how you make me feel. And I think, overwhelm and anxiety can come from feeling that you don't belong, that you're not appreciated, that you don't add value.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as human beings, there's some of the things that oftentimes we can't vocalize. We don't necessarily, individuals wouldn't necessarily say, I worked for an organization and I wasn't heard, but they know it. It seems like we know it at a cellular level, even if we don't put vocabulary around it. And we know when we're in a space where what we have to say is valued and somebody wants to hear and wants to listen.
So what we're talking here about, we've identified some of the early warning signs. We've looked at some of the things that business leaders can do better in terms of culture. What else can business leaders do better, do more of? I mean, we said listen, that's a cultural thing, but what else can leaders be doing more of?
I think whatever happens at leadership level often trickles down, and we all know that. And I think what leaders model is really important as well. If I'm sending emails at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., if I'm working through every lunch break, working through every weekend, that often then is the standard that other people assume is the standard to be lived to. And if that's what we portray, oftentimes then we head teams towards burnout. And sometimes, sometimes there are seasons where overwork is required, and that's fine, and all of us do it, and it's necessary. But over a long period of time, that can cause problems and burnout. And so I guess being mindful of how we work and the boundaries that we put in. I have great respect for some individuals I know who carry, a lot of employees who carry huge responsibility, and yet there will be particular days I can't get a hold of them because they are not working. They are on the golf course, or they are out for a run, or they are at home spending time with the kids, or, and I think we all have great respect for that. So working really hard when we're working, but playing really hard when we're playing. And I think that that is brilliant for staff to see.
Yeah, do you know what? We've got a culture in our business, and we've had this since day one, and we've only got a small team where we start when we start, we finish when we finish, and we work when we work. And in one of my other businesses, we looked to recruit a marketing graduate recently, and she said to us, it was an informal chat over a coffee a number of months ago, and she said, what are your start and finish times? And we went, we don't have any. You just start when you start, finish when you finish. And she couldn't get her head around it. And she said, well, how does that work? I said, well, look, as long as the customers are looked after, if we've got customers to look after, and as long as the work's getting done, you choose when you work, where you work, and how you work. She said, how many days holiday do you get? I said, how many days holiday do you want? And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, if the work's done and the customers are looked after, you don't have to work. So take as many as you want. And that, I mean, look, it's a bit extreme, but we started day one doing that, and then we work backwards. We're not working towards that. We're working away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It's a different way of working, but the world is nothing like what it was even 5-10 years ago. And I think people are realizing, the 9 to 5, having to sit at a desk, sometimes to appear I'm very busy, isn't always the most productive. I know actually my best hour of every day is between 6 and 7 a.m. After I've worked out, before the kids have got up, I probably do about 4 hours work in that hour. I know that it's super productive. For other people, it might be late at night. So it's not a necessary time, but there are certain times in a day when different people are incredibly productive. And having the freedom to be able to work within those hours is brilliant.
And it is choosing what is your time. I mean, I'm not a subscriber to this 5 a.m. club and you need to get up and drink kale smoothies and all that kind of stuff. Some people are just not naturally morning people. You know, every Monday morning I go at the gym for an hour at 8 o'clock and it's in my diary as a set appointment forever, and nothing will get in the way of that. Because it's my downtime, it's my me time, and it sets me up for the day, it gives me the energy. But as soon as I start compromising that, I'm building a business that doesn't give me an opportunity to switch off.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, it's different for everybody. Different people find that space that allows them to be creative, that allows them to produce their best results. I have friends that are now having what they call them net walks. So instead of network meetings, as many people, would have had pre-COVID, if they go for a networking walk, and have created some incredible ideas, launched some businesses from them. So I guess you find what works and what fits for you, so that you can be creative and produce your best results.
And do you think this anxiety and overwhelm is created by square pegs in round holes? Is it people that are stuck in a routine that they don't like and they're unable to escape? Is that the kind of the be and all of it?
Definitely, I think it's a factor. Yes. And I also think we rarely switch off. So if it's not emails that we're receiving, it's often TV or social media, or there's often always a feed. And I think the mind, whilst it does well when it's busy, it also does well when we turn the busy off for a little while. And so overwhelm, if we're continually bombarding ourselves with stuff, our minds and our bodies, mentally we become overwhelmed. And I also think one of the other things for anxiety, it's a fear of the unknown. And sometimes we try to look too far ahead into the future, try to figure out tomorrow, next week, next year. And oftentimes we have to pull ourselves back and know that, okay, I'm in today, and what's happening today I can deal with. Tomorrow I'll wake up and I'll have whatever I need for tomorrow. Sometimes we allow ourselves to get drawn into so much of the unknown that it becomes overwhelming in today.
So what is this about? Creating habitual change for you? If people are going to go from a situation where they're anxious and they're overwhelmed, clearly there's immediate issues to tackle, but is this about creating better habits over time? And if so, what are some of the habits that people should be looking to affect that change?
Absolutely. I think better habits, and we don't build habits in a day. Sorry, the rain, I don't know if you can hear that, but the rain has started absolutely pelting. It sounds like my garden's flooding. Can you hear it? I don't know if you can. Oh, okay. Sorry, Yorkshire rain. Habits, I think, the things that we habitually do are incredibly important. And oftentimes we've absorbed ways of living without even knowing it. And we live in a culture that often hails overwork and overbusy. And so habitually building in time for well-being, habitually building in time where we turn off, creating great boundaries, it's really important. And it only happens when we intentionally become aware of it, first of all, and then intentionally build it into our lives.
So April, what is it things like having that time off and switching off? Let's get into granular detail. Is it switching emails off at periods of the day? Is it not taking, what are some of the things that business owners can do and employees can do on a real basic level to start to affect change?
Certainly, it's having times when we're not always reacting. Oftentimes we react to the flurry of emails, or we react to the calls. I often have jokes with my boys because oftentimes my phone's on silent regularly. And I have this belief that my phone doesn't own me, I own it. So when it rings, if I choose to answer it, I answer it. But just because it's ringing doesn't mean I have to stop whatever I'm doing to pick it up, which infuriates my husband, because often when he's ringing, it's on silent and he can't get through to me. So there's a lot of jokes and laughs. Will mum answer? Will mum not answer? Usually mum doesn't answer. But I think even that, it's a way of living. Does our technology own us, or do we own it? Set times for emails can be really, really helpful. I know many people that start the day and their to-do list is all the emails that come in. Is that necessary? Is that working to our best ability and being the most creative we can be? Probably not. Turning off social media feeds, they're often a huge distraction. I remember listening a few years ago to a great podcast on multitasking, and it was a psychologist that had done loads of research on asking the question, can we really multitask? Can we do 5 things at once and do them all well? And the reality is we can't. Actually, what we do is our brain cannot focus on more tasks than one. So we put a little bit of focus on this one, then we break off to the next and break off to the next. And what happens is that we leave little residues of our attention on many different projects, but often not sharp, stellar focus on one. So focusing, and another thing that I think is really helpful is planning your week, planning ahead. So Sunday night, I carve out a few hours to plan my week, because there's nothing worse than starting the week and feeling like it's on top of you.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've carved out some time for planning and preparation, you know what's coming, you're ready for it. Even down to, your exercise, your well-being, those important things, planning them in, because if we just set off in the week without having made plans, we all know the week takes over, and before we know it, it's Sunday night again. So plan and preparation, really helpful, really important to intentionally try to keep overwhelm at bay, and being on top of our work and being on top of our week.
And I think you've hit on a good point. It's all about structure for me, discipline, whether it's turning email, social media, phone calls off, choosing when you will and won't answer them, preparation, diary planning, all of those things I'm a massive advocate of. But the other thing with social media, it's really, really easy to switch onto social media and think everybody in the world's got it better than you. And I often use a phrase, and it's something along the lines of, comparison is the thief of joy. Because if you log onto social media and think that they're more successful, they're better in the gym, they're a faster runner, they're a better parent, whatever it might be, that overwhelm and anxiety is just going to go through the roof. And actually the reality is, for most of it, it's just a veneer.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that quote. Brené Brown uses it a lot, and it's one that I think is so true, because we can be plodding along very happy with our lives and open up our phones, and boom, in a moment, what they have is bigger than what I have, and now I'm not satisfied with what I have anymore. And I think we have to be really careful about the feeds that we scroll through, and about what we allow to enter our mind. I often say our mind is like a garden, and our thoughts are seeds, and we can either plant flowers or we can plant weeds. And it's really important what we keep in front of our eyes and what we continually watch. There's a lot of stuff that I don't feed myself anymore, because it doesn't do me any good. And I actually also have questioned myself on some of the posts that I put out, in trying to make sure that I don't help anybody else fall into the category of comparison with some of the things that I may want to put on. So yeah, really helpful, and I think really helpful to remember that all of us, no matter what social media says about us, we're all on a journey. We all get some things right, we all get some things wrong, we all have good days, we all have days when we struggle, and days when challenge hits every single life. And reminding ourselves of that, it's not sunshine and rainbows all the time for anybody.
Yeah, it's being satisfied with what you've got, isn't it? It's if you're satisfied with what you've got, don't look to what somebody else has and be jealous of it.
Yeah.
Just probably one more question, and I'll open it up to questions. So if you're watching and listening, just let's have some questions in the chat box, and we can have April answer those. So how do you build resilience before, during, and after change? We're talking here about, small habits, about do's and don'ts. How do you start to build that resilience as an employer or as a leader, somebody that's really struggled with managing change and well-being through difficult times? How do you build that resilience?
I think three keys to resilience. The first is connection. So making sure people are connected, teams are connected. And even I'd go as far to say in one-to-ones with staff members, and when we're having catch-ups with staff members, asking them, who are the people you go to, making sure people have a network of people outside of work as well as inside work. We are built for connection, and it's incredibly important for a resilient life to have people that we know care about us, that we can offload to and talk to. So the first thing is making sure that we enable good team morale, good connection within teams. The second is hope. People knowing and purpose, people knowing they're working towards something, people knowing they're a part of something, a part of a community, being a part of a workplace and feeling like you really belong. And again, lots of that comes down to culture, but making sure people are clear of the vision and where they fit inside the vision. Purpose gets us out of bed in the morning, and sometimes it's an invisible, it's just what we know, it's the picture we're working towards, it's the thing that drives us, it's the thing that makes us give over and above. And so making sure that staff and team members know the purpose, know where they're headed. If you sent me a vague postcode tomorrow and said, right, this is where the meeting is at 3 p.m. And there was just a vague address, I probably wouldn't get there. I probably wouldn't even set off because I would know that I would get lost. But if you clearly sent me where to go, I'm on the way. And sometimes team need that. And when we have purpose and vision, we can withstand a lot of difficult stuff. And it's brilliant for resilience when team know where they're going. And they're, you've got momentum, you've got motivation. There's not a lot that can stand in the way of a team that know their purpose and direction. So
agreed, yeah,
definitely. And then the last thing I would say is rest. And that's not necessarily sleep, although sleep's really important to rejuvenate us and help us feel energized. But I would say making sure that individuals have time where they look after themselves and rest their mind from the go, go, go. Because go, go, go is brilliant, but we have to be able to turn off go, go, go to recharge the batteries so that we can go, go, go to the best of our ability the next time we're supposed to go, go, go. So yeah, hope, rest, and connection, I think, are vital to build teams that have great resilience.
No, look, I get it, but this one thing that really frustrates me with doing what I do is, less than 1 in 4 have got a written down business plan. Well, if you've got no business plan, you've got no clarity on your purpose, you've got no vision that exists, how can you possibly lead an organization, a team of people, a team of suppliers and partners if you don't have a shared vision? And that is going to lead to anxiety and overwhelm and just all the issues that we've talked about for the last however long.
Yeah, absolutely. I even think of my own business plan, which is stuck on a few different places around my house, one being the inside of my wardrobe. Now, it's probably not as fancy as the ones you do, Gary, so maybe I'll come to you for a fancier one day, but it's on the inside. So every morning when I get up and I get dressed, I know where I'm headed, and that does something to fuel my passion, that gives me purpose. And it's like the secret fuel of people that build something great. You know where you're headed, and there's purpose and excitement attached with it.
April, it's such a hot topic, this, for me, this kind of managing change and managing well-being in difficult times. And I think with everything that's gone on in the last 12 months, I don't even think we've scratched the surface. I think there's going to be collateral damage and an impact of the last 12 months for the next 3 to 5 years. Just for the benefits of those that are watching this live or on replay, what are some of the ways that you help your clients, just so they can keep their eyes and ears peeled for anybody in their network that they think might be impacted, might benefit from what you do? How do you help your clients?
I guess first thing is listening to what people need. sometimes people don't know what they need, they just know they need help. And other times people do know what they need. And listening to the voice of employees, I think, says so much, because they often tell us from the ground up what's needed. And I think that when we put our ear to the ground, hear where people are at, hear some of the things that would help people, and hear it from them, as opposed to sitting in a meeting room and putting a whole load of plans together ourselves. I think often the people do know what will really help them to stay well. And it's not all on the employers. It's a joint effort. Individuals have responsibility to look after their well-being, to manage themselves through change. But I think working for an organization that also holds that responsibility very seriously, I think is great for staff retention. It's brilliant for keeping people on board. And it says a lot. It says a lot to individuals. It says that we care, and it says we value and appreciate you. And the individuals that I get the privilege of working with, the different organizations I work with, their staff feel it. Their staff feel it when they bring somebody like me in who runs trainings on well-being, and it's an extra that they don't have to do, but it gets great results from individuals because staff see them going the extra mile.
Yeah, do you know what? I think staff retention's going to be a real hot topic over the next 2 or 3 years. I'm already hearing people. I was on a webinar last week, and they were saying it's really difficult getting hold of high caliber staff at the moment. If you've got a culture in your organization where you're not listening, you're not adding value, you're not helping your employees manage change and well-being and anxiety and overwhelm, then we're going to go work for somewhere else. So it's a brilliant retention strategy and a brilliant attraction of high caliber talent strategy if you get this right.
Yeah, definitely. And there's been many different research papers done on why employees stay. And often we think it's for the money, or often we think it's for promotions, but actually number one reason is they feel appreciated.
Yeah.
And when staff feel appreciated, they stay, and they give you over and above. They give you heart and soul. They want to work and do great work. And I think when staff are appreciated, one of the ways we appreciate them is by genuinely having an interest in how they are, and making sure that whilst they work for us, we do everything we can to enable them to be well, and to enable them to keep healthy their minds, and work to the best of their ability. People feel good when they work hard, and when their employers are concerned about their well-being.
So the organizations that are going to kick ass over the next few years are those that have got the right culture, great leadership, great vision, a plan, and are looking after their team.
Absolutely, definitely.
In essence. I'm going to hand it over to those that have joined us. If you've got any questions, can you please post them in the chat box, and we'll have April answer those. Just let us have any questions you've got, and we can take it from there. So yeah, April, you must be seeing, just while we're waiting for any questions to come through, you must be seeing a massive demand in what you're doing at the moment, for all the reasons that we've spoken about in the last 45 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. I guess well-being is one of those hot topics that's probably never more hot than it has been at the moment. I think that this year has been tough on everybody. So yeah, there's a lot of demand. And for topics, interestingly, things like sleep. I often run sleep workshops, which are, we think, how on earth does that relate to the workplace? But actually, if our employees don't sleep good, it has a huge knock-on effect on how they rock up to work the next morning. So yeah, some really interesting workshops that I get the privilege of delivering, and some really good content that we cover, and great conversations that staff feel able to have.
Fantastic. There's no questions forthcoming actually at the moment. Justin asking me why I can listen and type quickly, but I think we've covered a great deal of content there, April, and I think we've answered a lot of the basic questions that people would have. So I just want to thank you for some great insight, sharing some great ideas as you do every time I chat to you. And I think, as I said, this is going to be a really, really key topic for all leaders over the next 2, 3, 4 years at least. So, anything we can do to raise awareness of this important topic is key for me. So this whole how to manage change and wellbeing in difficult times is absolutely critical. So if I can just say, thanks for that great insight. Where can people get hold of you? How can they contact you?
Email is best. I am on LinkedIn. I'm just not on it a lot, but email is best to get me direct.
So if I ping everybody your email address, and if they want to get in touch with you, if they've got any questions, they can do that. So for those that are watching us live, those that are watching us on replay, I hope you've enjoyed today's webinar with April and you understand more about her purpose, what drives her every single day, what puts fire in her belly. And I think, what comes through loud and clear for me is just how much energy you've got for this topic. It really does come through. So thank you again for that. And, you've given us a great understanding of how you support business owners. So look out for details of our next webinar at the beginning of next month. And we'll look out for the recording of today's session just to catch up on anything that you might have missed. So April and all those that have joined us live, thank you ever so much for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.